Hello, everyone. I'm David G., Content Director and Editor-in-Chief at Boating Industry with another edition of Boating Industry Insider and a very special guest today, Captain Sandy Yawn, star of the Bravo hit series, Below Deck Mediterranean, and super yacht captain extraordinaire and lover of all things water and boats. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we're all united by a love of water and being on the water and boating in all shapes and forms. Tell me how your first exposure to boating started and where you kind of imagined that you could make a career out of it.
Well, honestly, I grew up water skiing. So our boats were really small on lake and Fort Hamer in Palmetto, Florida.
Okay.
So that was my first time on a boat when I was 5 years old. My first time, I had to answer an ad in the paper because I needed a job. Okay. So I started working for a boat called Soldier of Fortune. Oh. And basically I, washed, polished, and I got a job on that boat. And then I crewed on it and did everything. And then after that, I realized that's all it takes to be a captain, because back in the 80s, people really didn't, it wasn't like it is today. And that motivated me. So I went back and I went to work for a company called Plan Maintenance Systems with Steve Mangini. And I had a job where I just washed boats and maintained them all week, and I learned a lot. That guy, one of the boats I maintained, John Flynn, came out and offered me a full-time job. So I went back and asked Steve, could I take it? And he said yes. And he invested in my career. He sent me to sea school. I got a lot of, wheel time on his vessel, and it was a 67 Hatteras. So really, that was my first boat.
You were already kind of down the road a little bit in terms of, hey, I think I would really like to make this a lifelong career.
I think like a lot of people in America, they didn't even know there was a career in yachting until I saw Bravo, right? Below Deck. And that was me. And I, was born and raised in Florida. I never knew. I didn't even know there was a career in maritime. So I think after my exposure through maintaining these vessels, I got offered that job. That's when I realized I could actually pursue this and follow this career.
It's still, I would imagine, somewhat unusual to be a female captain in the industry. Back in the 80s, I can imagine you were really plowing some new ground. Tell me about that and just kind of maybe that little bit of extra push and motivation, desire, passion that it took to succeed.
I think when I started, obviously, listen, I was one of those kids that were a lost kid. I got mixed up in drugs and alcohol, and someone came into my life and changed my life. Now, I pursued a career based on everything I believed, what I was taught after I stopped doing drugs and alcohol. When that programming in my brain changed, I knew that anything I put in my mind and my heart's desire, I could accomplish, as long as I was willing to do the work and remain teachable and never be afraid to ask how. And so with those tools, I could conquer it. Even politics. I sit in my house and watch that and go, I'm in, because I gotta tell you, what's happening in our world today, it's so confusing for so many people. And I liked it. I read an article this morning. The one thing about us, and we're taught this in the maritime industry, is we just don't listen to one person. We have to take an accumulation of everything, and we decide because God gave us brains to decide. And that's something we have to really pay attention to. And when you're running these vessels with, clients and the owners and their children, you have to decide. You take in this weather report, you take in what another captain said, but ultimately your decision is to take that path, right? To follow that course or alter course. Navigating life and in, the sea is much like navigating life. We decide our destination, our course. And so for me, I didn't find the challenges because I was so driven. I didn't care. Whatever came in front of me, I accepted the challenge because I knew it was going to build my character. And I could look back and say, I earned that. It wasn't given to me. I earned my way to the bridge.
Kind of pivot to the show here. How did the producers at Bravo originally find you?
You know, it fell into my lap. I was referred to them, the production company. And, you know, I thought, you know, my first thought was going to ruin my career, you know, because it wasn't fondly looked after, because it really exposed a lot.
Yeah, it does.
And you know, then I thought about, you know, what I learned. If
Mm-hmm.
something presents itself, you don't say no to it.
Mm-hmm.
You try it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you like it, you do it. If you don't, you just step away from it. And that's really what I did. And I'm grateful I did, because I'm getting so many messages about how I inspire people, and especially women, like anything's possible. I get thousands of messages where they can, you know, start. I just tell them, you know, I'm going to start working with local schools that can speak to them. You know, not everybody can pay for a flight or even pay for STCW, the course they need to take. So I started this charity, and I want to fund it, the Captain Sandy charity, for kids that are right out. I didn't go to college, right? I was kicked out of 11th grade. There was no future for me.
No path.
I was on that other, if it wasn't for the maritime industry, I wouldn't be where I am today, because I am not that person. There are so many people like that. And I thought, if they can't afford it or their parents can't afford it, then maybe I raise the money, pay for their flight, pay for their school, and then hand them over to a crew agent, or, you know, someone like Fleet Miami, Glen Allen, or someone like Freedom Boat Club, the Sea Ray program. There's so many programs out there that could take new people who want to work in this industry, or shipyards, you know, Burger Boat Company is interested, you know, so many people like that.
I love your instincts, and I love how fair and balanced you always try to be. I appreciate that.
Thank you. I think that's largely because that's how I would like to be treated. And also the training that, remember, before I got into this, I learned how to build character, how to listen. That's a big one. Learn to be a good listener. And that's important for a leader. I rise 30,000 feet and I look at the big picture. And then I think about individual personalities and what's going on in their life. But there's a fine line. You're here to do a job. I'm not your counselor. I'm not your mother. I will listen to you, but you know, there's a fine line where I go, this is what I have to do. This is what I have to accomplish. And if you can't do that, I'm really sorry I have to let you go, but I need someone who can perform their duties. And that's really how I do it. And I think about, and I always follow up with them, and I give them a reference, you know, if they've done their work, and I recommend other avenues, but I just stay focused on what the real goal is. And it's to run a super yacht that's a charter business, and make sure that I stay, you know, lean. I can't have all this baggage. And, you know, we do, every one of us, including me, you know, I have to set that aside. I just told this story the other day. I just got off a bad phone call, walked out of my cabin and bit my first officer's head off. And within seconds, I saw his whole demeanor change. And I run a happy boat. A happy crew's a happy boat, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I looked at him and I go, you know what? I am so sorry. You did not deserve that. You know, you did not deserve that. And I think that's also key for a captain or someone leading a team, is when you make a mistake, apologize. Because that's when your team's going to have your back. And I always say this to my crew. When I hire them, they have my full respect and trust. I know it's my job to earn theirs, right? I have to earn it, but they have a job description. And until they show me they can't be trustworthy, or I do, you know, they lose my respect, and they have to earn that back, and they get 3 chances. And that's basically what I do in the beginning. And so they see me know my job, how I earn their respect and their trust is they see me know my job. I know what I'm doing. And then how I earn their respect is, their trust is when something happens, for example, like the first charter, they were giving Adam a hard time about, I don't eat fish. I'm allergic to fish. And I pulled out her preference sheet. And I said, it says that you eat fish. Like it's not. And then when I did that for the chef, he was like, wow, thank you, Captain. You know, like I've done that many times. I've had a month charter. We started out the first week. The guests were horrible to the crew. I pulled the principal in the bridge. I go, we got a month together. You spent €1 million for this charter. I want your trip to be amazing. If the crew don't feel appreciated, that doesn't mean you have to go, oh my gosh, but you can't slam them down all the time. It was a 180. They were amazing. At the end of that charter, we got €100,000 tip.
For even a fan of the show or someone who's, at least somewhat conversant about life on a yacht or the boating or yachting lifestyle, what is one thing that you could share with us that would surprise us all? One thing that we wouldn't glean from the TV show that would kind of like, wow, I had no idea.
You
Anything?
mean, I don't understand the question. You mean getting like what, you mean on my side or?
Yeah, well, just in terms of producing the show, the way it's edited, the way it's portrayed.
Okay.
Is
So
there something about the
100%,
show that would surprise us?
it's not scripted.
Okay.
And I know a lot of people think it is.
Yeah.
The only time, if they, cameras can't be everywhere all the time, but if they hear a conversation between two crew members and they don't get it on camera, they just ask us to have it over. That's it.
Oh, okay.
Like, there's nothing else. Like, of course, when they edit, they have to have the arc. It's a storyline, and most crew that work on boats know that it's real because that's how they act. I think there is a intense pressure when you have cameras that kind of winds the crew up a little more.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
I even said to production, we were in Italy. I called a crew, a provisioner, and a crew agent. And I said, hey, how many hospital visits have you arranged this? She goes, 14 last week from crew, right? How many, chief stews have you had to find? 23 in 2 weeks between the boats. Because the reality is, hey, listen, I went through 4 chefs. I actually reconnected with my crew. We're actually going to have a call on Friday.
Oh, nice.
That I hired for Tuscan Sun when I ran that boat back in 2004, and the journey that we had together and the stories and the fun and the crazy, it was, and so epic, and you think if we all wrote a book about all those stories and how we survived, because it's true survival.
Yeah.
And maintaining that attitude of, oh my God, we made it through this. It's like conquer, conquer, conquer. And I think largely the show shows that. The only thing I wish we could show more of is the engineering department and the bridge communication, because engineering and the bridge are the two things that make the boat run, right? So my direct communication with the engineer every day really largely affects my destination. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes I may need an air conditioning guy on board. I may need, a sewage guy on board. It's like, if you're out of toilets, that's terrible.
Problem.
If your Hammond plant or your sewage treatment plant isn't working, we need to get that fixed. And a lot of times that happens. Yeah.
That is one thing about, I just started watching Below Deck Sailing Yacht, the current season, and they do show a little more, obviously a sailing vessel a little different than a motor yacht, but they do show a little more of the engineering, like, something on the mast broke the other day, and they've had some, because they were.
You know why? Because they're so chill, and the engineers are really cool people. Super yacht engineers are like, that's my engine room. I don't want, they're like different minds. It's like, chill, man. Yeah. Let the people see this. Yeah. It's not that the cameras don't want to be in there. It's that the engineers they're going to break something. Like, they're not going to break anything. Right. Like, let them walk in with the camera. They can walk right down the middle. And to me, it's like, it really, if they just showed that part of it, how many people would want to be an engineer? Or maybe it'll show just how little work the engineers have to do. Yeah. Because all they do is make a phone call. Some engineers work really hard. Some just call on the phone. So the reality is, some of those engines are beautiful. The money they spend in that is incredible. You have so many varieties. So I'm hoping the sailing shows sort of open the door to the yacht world engineering side. Okay.